Based on the results from my ecological footprint assignment, the amount of Earths that it would take to support my current lifestyle ended up being 2.4. My overshoot day was June 2nd. This was very surprising to me as I make a conscious effort as I try and do my part to be as least wasteful as possible. The results weren't exactly very surprising to me because coming from a place like America where it takes 5 Earths to sustain everybody's lifestyle in our nation, I could see how that makes sense for many people outside of my household who don't believe in global warming and generally just live a wasteful lifestyle.
Then check this out.
Segment 3, former Vice President Al Gore, quote, "The vast majority of scientists agree that global warming is real," close quote. Now let me quote you again, President Václav Klaus, quote, "Global warming is a myth, and every serious person and scientist says so." What do you know that Al Gore doesn't?
I don't know what he knows. I don't believe that he's that much interested either in science or in economics.
Also, it saddened me to see that my efforts have been somewhat in vain, as I am very conscious of my efforts to keep the environment clean. I think the take-home message from this exercise was that we could all live a little bit less wastefully. And when a quiz like this puts it in perspective for you, it's very easy to say, oh, because I recycle, I must not be so wasteful. Sustainability to me means that you're able to maintain something for a long time without being wasteful and degrading it in any means. One way I could practice being more sustainable is by eating less red meat. I currently exercise every day, and it's hard for me to get away from the protein that I need. And I didn't know the impact of red meat until taking this quiz, which was just several variables that I didn't account for, such as the grazing land that the meat came from, and the industrial processes that would process the food to make it available for the everyday consumer. Finally, the term stewardship means making wise use of the natural resources provided by the earth. It's a philanthropic responsibility for all people to take part in stewardship. An example of stewardship that I take part in every day is cultivating a garden with my family. This garden has been part of our household for a while now, and the continued cultivation and care of it is a prime example of stewardship, as we're making effective use of the resources that we're given. To wrap up, this is an environmental issue that I am very concerned about, and it's in the field of chemistry. In particular, there's an example known as Freon. Many people know what Freon is. It's a gas that was used as a coolant because it was very cheap and affordable, and it was used in many things as a refrigerant. However, what people don't hear about is what Freon did to the environment, how it has been affecting the ozone layer. Now, this is something I'm passionate about, but basically the reason you don't hear about this kind of thing is because it's a little bit hard to explain. So I'm going to attempt my best to try and do that in a very brief moment. But basically, when UVC light hits regular oxygen O2, it creates oxygen with radicals. These radical oxygen then react with more regular oxygen to create ozone, and that protects us from the UVC light, and that prevents us from getting skin cancer and other things of that nature. Now, something like Freon, when it gets released into the atmosphere, it's able to travel through the troposphere up into the stratosphere, where our ozone is contained and where these chemical reactions are going on. Now, in Freon's case, when UVC light hits the chloride group, it also excites that chloride and makes it a reactive species. Now, this reactive species is then able to react with ozone and create regular oxygen gas, and then an excited form of the chloride with an oxygen radical. This excited chloride with the oxygen radical then reacts with the regular oxygen with the radical to form the same radical chloride and oxygen gas. Now, the important part about this process is that excited chloride isn't used up in this reaction, and the reactants of this reaction are ozone, and it turns it back into regular oxygen. Now, you can see this is very harmful because now you have another excited chloride atom to go ahead and repeat this process over and over and over again. And things like this don't just go away in 1 to 2 minutes. These halons could last in the stratosphere for decades, and within a lifetime they could destroy over 50 tons of the ozone layer. And this is probably why you don't hear about things like this. is because it's much easier to blame it on something like global warming as a result of CO2 emissions. But in this specific case, there are several examples where chemicals that people have been using for everyday use that are very easy to look over make it into our environment and just wreak havoc. This is something I was passionate about, and I thought I'd explain it to you guys. Hopefully it just makes you aware of this issue, and thank you for enjoying the video.
That's quite big. Impressive.